Madhouse UK podcast. I'm Steve Tierney, and you all know that because you're players, I hope. Or perhaps you've stumbled across this channel and think, what on earth is this? So, give you a bit of background. The Madhouse UK are a company that run online turn-based games, and our main game, we've run lots of games over the years, but these days we run one main game called Dungeonworld. And the way Dungeonworld works is that every couple of weeks the turn runs, all the players of the game get an electronic printout, a PDF of their game position. They then look at their game position, decide what they want to do next, enter coded orders which are described in the rulebook to instruct us in what they want to do. Those are typed into our computer, which then runs the next turn. As I said, turns run once every 2 weeks, so it's what you would call in the modern world a slow-moving game. And that suits a lot of people because the sort of players we have are people who perhaps don't have a gaming group near them, don't have time to play with the sort of ways that some kind of modern gamers do, dedicating hundreds of hours of their life to video games or tens of hours of life to board games with groups of friends. And of course, in the current environment, the COVID-19 plague world, it's particularly effective because you can play games from anywhere without mixing with anyone and follow all the rules and still have fun, and a community has built up. Dungeonworld has been running for over 20 years, and it started off as a game where you received your turns in the post, in the physical post, and it graduated to games that you received by email, as most of its competitors did at the time. And there's not many of us left these days. We're one of the few remaining turn-based fantasy games of this type left in the world. There are some others, and good luck to all of them. So that's what we are, that's what we do, and most of the people who watch this podcast will be players of Madhouse and Dungeonworld, but occasionally other people stumble in. Look, if you like the look of what you sound, please do head to our website and have a look at the rulebook. You can download it and read it. You can sign up for a completely free position, which you can play for free forever, so there'll never be a charge. There's no limitations to that position, except that you can only play one character. That character can do everything all the other characters can do. It can achieve anything any other character in the game can do. So what do you actually do in the game? Well, you adventure, you bash monsters and steal their stuff, as adventuring games go. So I suppose in that respect you'd call it Diablo-esque, though it predates Diablo. And, it's just one of those standard fantasy games, but the world has grown over the 20 years we've run it, and we've been constantly adding new things to it, and hundreds, thousands of players have taken part, and they've all participated and added something to it, and so the game has steadily grown. The richness of the game, the areas you can visit, there are hundreds of thousands of features of the game, locations and items and monsters and places, and it's an entire world with continents and regions and countries and hundreds of dungeons, and it just keeps growing and growing. So if you like the sound of that, please feel free to sign up for a free position, and maybe one day you'll decide you want a commercial position, which is how we pay the bills. So to those players who've been waiting, again, I know it's been a while since the last podcast, sorry about that. It's crazy times, isn't it? And we talked about that in the last podcast, and I've had a few messages. People seem to like the last podcast and the kind of free way that we chatted about stuff. So I'm going to try and do that again a bit today, mix up some game stuff with some stuff that I think, and we'll kind of see how it goes. But it's interesting, isn't it, that everybody is in the same boat here. I mean, pretty much every country in the world, certainly every country that we might sort of play games with, or the Dungeonworld players, are experiencing the same thing. We're all kind of locked up at home. We've got different sorts of limitations. So here in the UK, it's perhaps not as bad as some places, but it's still, fairly strong restrictions. You're not allowed to go out unless you're going out for very key reasons. So you're allowed to go out if you want to get your shopping. You're allowed to go out if you're helping a vulnerable person, which is why I tend to be out a lot, because I'm with a volunteer team who are helping elderly people who are isolated. You're allowed to go out, I think there's a few other reasons, like you're allowed to move house, you're allowed to transfer kids to the other parent if you're a broken family. There are various reasons, but they're not, and you're allowed out once a day. Actually, the law doesn't say once a day, but the guidance says you're allowed out once a day for exercise, for up to an hour, and that can be, again, the guidance says walking, running or cycling. Actually, the law doesn't say that. The law just doesn't actually specify, but that's broadly it. And there's lots going on where there are a lot of curtain twitchers who are looking at what people are doing and criticising them, and I just feel like this giant drama that is enveloping the world, and I don't say that to detract from it, because it's a real drama, but this drama is affecting people in different ways, and some people it's making them very generous and very tolerant and very much wanting to help their neighbours, and some people it's making them very intolerant and very curtain twitchy and nasty, and it's disappointing for me that police and councils and authorities around the world are setting up ways for people to snitch on their neighbours. By which I'm not saying that it's okay for their neighbours to have a house party or to do any of the things that are against the rules, but I just don't think it's helpful. I don't think it's at all helpful to encourage people to snitch on one another. You know, that's not how you talk people into seeing sense and working in a teamwork way, working as part of the community. You don't do it by criticising them, being nasty to them. So I've said this before, but I'm still seeing it all over social media, and I'm disappointed every time I see it. And people seem to have become so judgmental. Like you'll see, I sort of had a ding dong with someone on Facebook today who was saying they were a shop worker in Tesco, and they were saying that they didn't think that people should be allowed to go there and buy drink and Easter eggs because those aren't essentials. And in fact, they went a bit further than that and said they thought they should be beaten up if they did that. Obviously, I don't support that at all. But I think you've got to be careful when you're judging people because you don't know their situation. And it's so easy to do. It's so easy to see somebody who's not quite following the rules, and then you're like, look at that twat, you know, doing that. It's too easy to do it. And then you'll find that you're the one breaking the rules somehow with perfectly good reason, and someone will say it to you, and you'll be like, leave it out, mate, you don't know what's going on here. And then perhaps you'll think, well, perhaps I was a bit quick to judge. By which I'm not saying that everybody who goes and buys 2 crates of cider or whatever at Tesco is doing it with some... I mean, look, think about it like this. If you've got kids at home, you're stuck at home. Say you're a single parent stuck at home with kids, and they are going absolutely stir crazy as kids do when they can't get out. They've already been in the garden 6 times and they've had enough of that. And they don't. Perhaps they're younger kids, so they don't fully understand the situation. You're trying to explain it to them. You can't. They're fighting with one another, driving you mad. It's really, and you're closeted up, and you know there's weeks and weeks of this ahead, right? So let's just imagine, it's my phone dinging there. So let's just imagine you're in that situation. Then Easter comes and the kids say, I want an Easter egg. And you've already been out to get your shopping and you didn't think about the Easter egg because there's a lot going on and it's easy to not remember, isn't it? And then you're, all right, I'll pop back and get you an Easter egg. And you nip back and you get the Easter egg. Now, as long as you're careful, you go there in your car, you maintain your safe distance, you buy your shopping, you go straight home. It's understandable, isn't it? It's not something you should be beaten up for or pilloried for. People should point fingers at you and say, I don't think you should be out. That's not essential, is it? You know, it's and I responded with one of the people I was helping was an elderly gentleman, and he called us out to do some shopping for him, and we went out and went to his house, and all he wanted was 60 fags, and cigarettes for Americans there, and we were a bit taken aback because this gentleman he was fairly elderly and he had severe lung problems, and that's why he was isolating. So he only wanted 60 fags. He said, I don't eat a lot. He said, I've got all the things I need. I just want these. Now, we could easily have said to him, no, we're not doing that. You shouldn't really be smoking because you're elderly and you've got lung problems and it's not going to help, And those the cigarettes aren't essential. They're not, they're not food, are they? And if we'd have done that, what would have happened? He's not going to quit because we're a bit judgmental about him. What he'd probably do is go outside, try and get them himself, and put himself at risk. Because if I catch COVID-19, most probably I'll be fine. If somebody much younger than me catches it, almost certainly they'll be fine. I know there are a few exceptions to that, just like there are a few exceptions to every disease, including things like regular flu. But broadly, the people who are mostly being killed by this are people with underlying health conditions or elderly people, and that's just the stats. And I know there are a few that are different. So, but if he goes out and he gets it, he's probably going to die. I mean, it's certainly a very bad situation for someone with severe lung problems in their late 80s. So we took the view to get them for him. Now, other people could be quite judgmental. If he'd gone out on his own to buy fags, somebody could have said, what the hell do you think you're doing, you selfish twat, or whatever, and been very judgmental about it. And I don't think that would be fair. People have to live, and people have different priorities and different things they need. And part of this, it's very easy if all you do is sit at home playing, Xbox or whatever, and that's what you do normally anyway. So if you're still doing that, the world may not seem like it's changed very much. But to some people who don't have that, who are older and have different interests and different things, some people need a drink, to deal with the stress of all this, to give them something to do because they enjoy having a drink. And I'm not talking about getting blotto and making yourself sick. I'm talking about there's nothing wrong with having a couple of beers. There's nothing wrong with having a bit of chocolate. In some ways, these are essential for mental health, for just people understanding the world hasn't completely gone and never. You see in the paper, what if this goes on for another year? The consequences to people's mental health and to people's feelings are going to be massive if that happens. So it's just, that's how I feel about it. And anyway, I'm doing what I always do and not talking about the game. There's a couple of things I wanted to tell you about today. So I've been talking on Facebook with players, and we are running a free game of Lizards. Now, Lizards is a fantasy war game, and in Lizards, what you do is you control a tribe of lizards who want to conquer the land for your clan. There are 16 players in the game, and they're all set onto one existing boundaried map. And obviously, it doesn't take you long to expand your territory and begin hitting one another. And then you've got to be the most successful lizard by meeting the victory conditions. Now, along the way, you can make partners with some of the other lizard clans, and so diplomacy is important. And back in the day, Lizards, which my company didn't make, it was invented by a New Zealand company, and I just happen to still have a copy of it. I don't run it anymore, but I thought, well, we'll run a free game, turns every 2 weeks, turns twice a week, and that give you a chance to play, give you something to diplomatise, give you something to take your mind off this kind of relentless negativity that we've got in the news, because though it's very serious, relentless negativity also has an effect. It gets you down. It drags your spirits down, and when it drags your spirits down, you drag other people's spirits down. You can't help it. This kind of heavy cloth of grim mood is oppressive, and we have to do everything we can to try and beat it. And this is something I can do. What I can do is run a free game, and players can join in. Unfortunately, so far I've not managed to fill it. So if you're watching this video and you fancy trying Lizards, go to the Madhouse website, download the rulebook, and then on the Lizards part of our website, send in a sign up. You can do one of the custom sign ups, which lets you plan your entire position with points, which is quite for advanced players or people who feel ambitious. Or you can just do one of the preset sign-ups, where there's 6 different ones, I think. I would recommend the red one as the most quick and easy, off-the-shelf. Red sign-up is the best one to go with. But please do come and join in, and if enough players come in to start a second game, I'll run too. But it's just, there's no charge at all for it. It's just something that I think you might enjoy, and if you've not tried it, it's worth trying. Okay, so in the last podcast, a few people sent me some things. I got a message from Josh Birnbaum, or Birnbaum, sorry Josh if I don't know how to say your surname. And Josh says, "Hi Steve, great podcast. Really good to hear a voice of reason amidst all the pandemic. Here in Wisconsin, USA, slightly northwest of Chicago, everything is shut down mode as well. I chuckled when I saw Captain Trips, but quickly sobered as there was nothing amusing about any of it. And then he was surprised that there were 9,000 plus monsters. Really amazing to think about how vast and deep Dungeonworld is compared to most RPGs. Yeah, it is. It's immense. It's got more locations, more items, more monsters than just about any other game, I think, in the world. There might be some that I'm not aware of, but most companies are not running the game for 20 plus years and building it every day, growing it every day, and that's what we've done. So that's why the game is huge. There's a lot to find and a lot to explore, but still there are limits to it, and there are still things we're going to keep adding to keep improving the game. In fact, that's what I'm spending a lot of time in this isolation. Although I go out a lot of spare days to help the vulnerable, the evenings I just sit around and I think, well, I'll do some work, and I'm tinkering and adding things, and I think I think players will enjoy seeing stuff beginning to appear, stuff that I've talked about on the podcast, stuff we've talked about in the chat room, stuff we've talked about on Facebook, and new stuff I've told nobody about. So good fun, and I think people are enjoying it. I got a message from Adrian Baker. He said, "Great podcast, Steve. Keep the chin up and stay healthy. We're all friends together in the big DW family." Yes, Adrian, we absolutely are. He says, "Big shout out to Bill Mailing to keep isolating and announce the coronation." Bill Mailing, of course, is currently playing the new ruler of Bernie, the kingdom in which Dungeonworld is dominated by. And then he says, "I've got wood for sheep." Loving it. I bet you have got wood for sheep, Adrian. Of course, Settlers of Catan reference, which I'm loving. What else am I doing? On the side of my house, I've had for a long time a shop which I've used as my office, and as for some storage, but also to do some work out of. But it hasn't been open as a retail shop for, I don't know, 10 years probably. Back in the day, it was an internet cafe that also sold games and collectibles, and I've decided to reopen it as a comic shop. Not that I give a stuff if it makes any money. It doesn't matter to me whether it does or not. I want to own a cool comic shop again. I used to many years ago. I've decided I want to do it again. If I'm working in there on the work that I do anyway, I may as well have the shop there. And then if people want to come and buy things, they can. It costs me nothing. I don't need any staff. I can still do what I normally do. but it also means that I've got an outlet for the kind of £50,000 worth of comics that I own, that I've been talking about selling for a long time. I've spent the last 6 months organising them, cataloguing them, pricing them, putting them in alphabetical order and numerical order. I've got it pretty much all sorted. I'm now working on the shop, decorating the shop. I'm going to recarpet it in a couple of weeks' time. I'm putting in new lights, new shelving, new furniture, a new till with a desk, and that's going to be absolutely really cool. And it's going to be a fun place for me to work from, to do Madhouse work, as well as to open. I'll probably only open a couple of days a week while I'm working on Dungeonworld. But kind of fun to have it open, and I don't expect, in a town like I live in, 30,000 people plus villages, it's not really the place where a comic shop is going to sort of set the world on fire. But there are some collectors here, and a lot of what I sell is going to be online, and it still enables me to do my game work, so it affects nothing but enables me to have a fun shop again, which I'm excited about. And I've been looking at shops around the web, other people's shops, and looking at how they're decorated, how they're laid out, and stealing ideas from them as you do. Things I like, things I don't like, things I want to avoid, because I really want it to look cool. I want it to look like a really, really snazzy kind of games and comic shop. Mostly comics, some games. My intention with games is I've got a lot of old stock from when I had a game shop before. That will go up for sale. Lots of collectible cards, things like that, some other stuff, bits and pieces. But I'm also going to stock the kind of top 10 selling games in the world at any given time as well. So people can buy a new copy of one of the top 10. I'll only stock a couple of copies of each of those, but people will buy one, I'll replace it as I sell one. So that gamers have a place to buy the most popular. And then, a few other bits and bobs that I find along the way that I think people might be interested in. And I think it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it, and it's just another one of those things I like to keep busy, as you know. Okay, so a couple of things I was going to talk about. I was thinking about telling my creeping death story. So back in the earlier days of Dungeonworld, not the beginning, but I don't remember how many years we were in. We've been running a few years, and I introduced a monster called the Creeping Death, and it was a fun idea at the time. It was tied to a demon plot that was going on. And what I thought I would do is I'd create quite a weak monster that was just like a black blob, and it would kind of crawl around the dungeon. It'd be fairly easy to kill, but I thought I'll let them replicate. So if you don't kill them quick enough, they become a more serious problem. If you ignore them and think that will do nothing, then there's a lot more. And when there's a lot more, they're much more threatening, as you might imagine. If you've got 25 in a square and you're next to it, it could kill you. It's certainly if you're a beginner character. And I thought this would be quite fun. It will force players to respond to when as soon as they appear, you want to rush over, kill it quick before there's loads of them, and you've got a real problem. And I quite like the urgency that it would create, so I put it into the game. And I thought, how often do I want it to recreate? And I thought, well, in a worst case scenario, I want it to make another 4 or 5 in a turn. So I put a random selector in, and then as it moved around, the movements it made would trigger the random selector, and it would, every time it selected one of them, it would make one. Well, it could move 10 times a turn. So I gave it a kind of a 50-50 chance. So on average, I was a bit lower than that, it was about 30-40% chance. So on average, it would make a few more each turn, was what I thought. And I thought this was a great idea. So I tipped it in. I put it into one dungeon, and I thought next turn there'd be 6 of them, and then the following turn there'd be like 12 or 18 of them, and people would be like, quick, rush over there and kill them. And I put it in a dungeon where there was quite a few people. What did I forget? Clever me. So it's stupid, I'm sure you could, even listening to this now, you can see what I'm about to say coming, but what I forgot was that I was thinking one of them will create another 4 or 5 or whatever in a turn. What I forgot is that the minute they're created, because normally when monsters are created, they're created at the end of the turn. They're created by players being within the field of vision where a monster can be summoned. A monster appears just outside that field of vision. So if there's no players, no characters in a dungeon, no monsters appear. But if there's a load of characters, monsters appear just beyond where they can see, so that as they move forwards, they've got things to fight. That's how it works. This is different. This was the monster spawning another monster by its own movement. You know what's coming, don't you? So it created a monster. And I was thinking just it moving around creating more, but of course every monster it created also created a monster. And every monster it created also created a monster. So instead of getting 6 monsters a turn, you would get the 6, and then those monsters would have another 8 movement sectors still to move, and they would create another load, and all the ones they created would have another 6 sectors to move, and they would create another load, right up till the last move where they got to move. And I did it. Not only did I forget about it, I then got tied up with other things, presumed it was working. I saw some players talking about, there's a lot of these creeping darknesses over there, so creeping death, creeping darkness, I forget what it was called. There's a lot of them over there, and I thought, it's working, great. And I just got distracted for about 2 turns when somebody said, is there meant to be this many creeping darknesses in the dungeon? And something like 25,000 had spawned. I don't know how the maths of it worked. I forget exactly how it worked, but it was meant to be a couple of dozen. 25,000 had spawned. So many had spawned that it slowed the runtime of the game down by an hour. It normally takes like 2 or 3 hours to run the game. It slowed it down by an additional hour. I thought, why is it taking so long to run this turn? And once I realised it was a real problem, because first of all I went and I looked at the dungeon and I said, oh my god, the whole place is just covered in this kind of wash of black and these little black inky creatures. And on stacks there were like, you can have like unlimited things on a stack, and some of them had like 250 on the same square. Like, it's worse than that, because if you're one of the players, let's imagine you're a tough player who's got lots of defences and it's very hard for them to kill you. You might survive being attacked by 600 monsters. But if you're attacked by 600 monsters a phase, your turn goes from 20 pages to 160 pages of just like, I was attacked by the creeping death, I was attacked by the creeping death, over and over and over again for page after page after page. And honestly, it was so stupid of me. And I did laugh, but then I thought, what on earth am I going to do? Because to manually kill a monster in the game, there are a few things you can do. Right, I can set it up to do an order on the runtime, and then that order will kill it itself. But that doesn't necessarily work if they're also moving and spawning. I can go into the map and manually click and say kill this, and that takes a couple of seconds. But if you've got 20,000 to do, you don't really want to do that 20,000 times. So that's why I didn't use that approach to do it. So I had this real problem. How am I going to get rid of 20,000 monsters in this kind of in this problem I've created? I didn't dare run it again because it could spawn 50,000 and it could begin to really cause the system problems. I mean, we've never got anywhere near the ultimate limit of characters you can have in the game, but there is one, and I wouldn't want this. I could have crashed the whole game, and certainly I could have made it take 3 days to run or something. So what I eventually did is, in the game, out of game time, but in my kind of editor, I created a super powerful character that could basically kill these monsters with every hit it did, and gave it an area effect, so it killed everything around it. And then I put them on the square, and I issued a move order for them manually and had them moving around, and everywhere they went, they killed 400 monsters, and I just walked them around the dungeon, and they killed virtually all of the monsters. And then I changed the maths, dramatically downscaled it so that wouldn't happen again. But it was fun. I certainly had a heart flutter, if you like, when I saw it, because I realised that it was potentially a game breaker. I mean, I could have rolled the game back to the previous turn and killed them, so it wouldn't have ended the game, but it would have been a real hassle, and I would have had to explain to everyone why I was rerunning a turn. It just would have been. I narrowly missed that, and that is probably the closest I've come to breaking Dungeonworld while I've been running it in all these years. There's a few other stupid things I've done, but that was probably the closest I've come. So all good fun. Okay. I know you're kind of locked up a minute and you're probably all looking for things to do. I'll just make a couple of recommendations. I thought The Invisible Man was an absolutely fantastic movie. If you've got a way to see that, well worth a watch. My second favourite movie of the year, very, very tense and interesting. A way to make a strong female lead and a strong black support character and not make it seem woke and forced, but actually brilliant performances, absolutely natural. That's how you do diversity in movies. With good writing, not with like forcing it in and making it just to annoy people, but doing it with great actors and great writing, so it feels like part of the plot. And God, it's a great movie, that one, but not the best. The best movie I've seen is The Hunt. Now, I love The Hunt. It's another take on this. A group of elites capture some individuals, set them free in an area, and then hunt them, and they all have to escape. It's another one of those kind of been done a lot of times, but it's got a really interesting twist, and the twist of it is that the elites doing it are kind of left-wing liberal elites. And the people they've captured are what they would call in America the deplorables, the Trump supporters. And I've not seen this taken it before. Almost always, your businessmen and your wealthy guys and your right wingers, they're almost always the bad guys, aren't they? And it's the crusading kind of social justice hero that's the champion. And if you're centrist, it's a bit boring. And if you're on the right, it gets a bit tiresome, frankly. You still enjoy the movies. You can suspend your belief and enjoy it. But to see it spun on its head in such an effective way and such a fun way, and there's a lot of comedy in there too. Well, I really liked it. I thought it was a great movie, and the action is great, the acting is great. The lady, I forget her name, but the lady who plays the lead character, just fantastic. And the fight scene between the two women at the end, it's up there with anything you've seen. It's just a really good fight scene. And previously, I would say my favourite fight scene was Rowdy Roddy Piper in what's that one? They Live. Now that was a great fist fight scene near the beginning of that movie. But this, really enjoyed it. Very realistic, very creditably done as the way two fit trained women probably would fight. And again, a really strong female lead that you can absolutely get into and support and believe in a kind of action fantasy way, and. Just loved it. Thought it was just really good. So those are two great movies that I thoroughly recommend you think about getting out and watching. I'm going to get back to Dungeonworld is due this week. Today is the last day for Easter special offers. You've got till midnight tonight, so if you haven't done it yet, take them up because it's closed after midnight tonight. We'll be running the game on Wednesday. I very strongly hope so. Hopefully, it turns out late Thursday, maybe late Thursday night, something like that. That's kind of where we are. If you're not, if you don't subscribe to this channel and you've just come across it, please do subscribe to it. Please like this video because that helps the algorithms for our video to be seen more often. Please leave a comment, anything you like. Let's have a chat. Talk about what you're doing, how coronavirus is affecting you, how the isolation is affecting you. Talk about the game. Talk about guilds. Talk about movies, whatever you fancy. And please do come and join us on Facebook, on our Facebook page, because we chat all the time there as well, and that's a really useful way for us to connect. I keep saying I'm going to do a chat room, and I will do a chat room, but I've kind of missed it up till now, so I'll do it straight after we run the turn this week, so probably Friday night or something like that will be chat room, and I will confirm that in my next podcast. Until then, be safe, stay well, follow guidance, but think sensibly and don't panic. Talk to you soon.